Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lincoln Way Community High School District 210 Board of Education meeting for Thursday, March 18th, 2021. Please stand for the pledge if you are able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Ms. Janice Doyle?
Here.
Mr. Kirking?
Here.
Mr. Lacine?
Here.
Mr. Lucetti?
Here.
Mrs. Stokes?
Here.
Mr. Costick?
Here. Moving on to public comment, we've got one gentleman signed up and several letters to read. David Dubois. Did I butcher it? Thank you. The podium's yours, sir.
Thank you for the time to the opportunity to comment. I'm hoping tonight that the discussion regarding in-person instruction is not moving from hybrid to in-person, but rather it's moving to in-person, and the discussion probably is going to ensue as whether or not it's half-time or full-time. I would actually, my wife and I would actually encourage you to consider the full-time, 5-day instruction all day, full boat. The reality is we've been advised by the district that the students are getting a full curriculum. Really, that's not the case. That's not accurate. It's a halftime. They're halftime students. I'm not going to go into detail about the effect that's had. For example, my daughter who's a junior with regard to her AP prep or her SAT prep. I asked her tonight, for example, with the SAT she just took last Saturday, which prepared you more, Lincoln Way or Khan Academy? I asked her that tonight, and she said Khan Academy, on her own. So, just asking you salvage what's the rest of the, left of the rest of the year, and go full-time, in-person, 5 days a week. The district has my number on file, so if any of you ever want to have a discussion, more detailed, I'd be happy to do it. So, thank you.
Moving on, we have some letters to read. Some folks that emailed in. I don't know that we'll be able to get to everyone because there were quite a few. We're going to do our best here. Do I have the first one, Scott?
Yeah, you can go first. We'll just go around one.
Okay. Dear Superintendent Tingley and the Lincoln Way 210 School Board, I am offering a public comment today because I am running to be a member of the Lincoln Way 210 School Board, and students have reached out to me regarding their desire to maintain the current AB hybrid system. I hope that you will also listen to their concerns about safety and desire to maintain routines and to take them into consideration. I am impressed by these young people and support them completely. Thank you, Emily Beagle.
The next is from Abigail Brown. Good afternoon. My name is Abigail, and I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East. I appreciate all that you are doing to hear the students' voices. I would love for this message to be read aloud at the board meeting because I know many students share my opinion. Thank you again. Dear Lincoln Way School Board, if we are to return to school, the social distancing guidelines will be greatly altered, and therefore the likelihood of exposure and quarantine is exponentially higher. It is not fair to put everyone, including students, teachers, and all of their families, at risk. I do not want to walk into school every single day hoping that it isn't my last day. At any moment, we could be sent home because somewhere near us was exposed. This risk would increase greatly if we were only 3 feet apart from other students and the hallways and lunchrooms are twice as populated. This would add even more stress to the year because it is difficult to keep up with material covered on the synchronous days when you are not in attendance for 2 weeks. The hybrid schedule is perfect because it allows for students to be properly distanced and interact with their teachers and classmates on in-person days. Personally, I believe the asynchronous days are not only beneficial to focus on schoolwork and keep the school from being overpopulated, but they are also essential this year specifically for the students' mental health. On top of this, as an AP student, the Acellus program is not really an option because it doesn't truly provide students with the necessary resources, practice, and experiences to perform well in the AP exams in May. I feel like I have no choice but to go to school. We should not have to choose between our health, safety, and our education. I am asking that the board members consider what it is like to be a student during these very difficult times, and please consider that we've already had so much uncertainty and change this year. Thank you for your time.
This letter is from Lars Bauer. I and many others who agree with me strongly advise against going back to in-person learning. It brings up many concerns. 1, how will you handle twice as many students in the already overcrowded parking lots? 2, if you revoke juniors' parking passes, will you refund them or pay for their transportation? If juniors are then required to take the bus, can you promise that there will be social distancing? Because as of now, buses are not properly social distanced and students are stacked into groups of 2 per seat, which makes it physically impossible to distance. Will you pay the hospital bills of those who contract COVID due to being forced to go back full schedule? Can you properly make sure that every student and staff member wears a mask? Because as of now, there is no structure in place that requires people to wear their masks properly. I have seen it. Are you going to provide those who work schedules and sitting schedules that are reliant upon the AB learning? Will you allow all of the people who are going to be required to switch to Acellus if we transition to full in-person schedule to pick up where they left off? Or will we all be required to restart an entire semester? How could you possibly risk losing students to COVID like Sarah and putting students and their families and our community at risk just to try to rush your way out of a global pandemic? Please make the right decision here. Keep things on the AB schedule. It is working just fine and it keeps kids safe who can't even receive the COVID vaccine yet. From one of your own students with concern, Lars Bauer, class of 2022.
Hello, my name is Matiana Dialba, and I am currently a junior at Lincoln Way East. I would like to comment on the possibility of returning full in-person after spring break. This decision could affect a lot of people, and myself included. I have 2 older parents who are both at high risk if they were both to catch COVID. Because of the vaccine guidelines in Will County, my mom has not been able to receive a vaccine. My fear is that we were to be around more students that could possibly give her COVID. This is a fear that many other students have who have family with underlying conditions. If we do go to full in-person, I feel as if it would have no choice but to go to Acellus. I am a junior this year, meaning my schedule is loaded with AP and honors classes to prepare me for next year. Going to Acellus would mean I would lose prep time for AP tests in May and even lose some of the courses I am taking, including Spanish and choir. This could impact my ability to succeed on these exams and in my classes next year. Finally, in recent years, this district has taken initiative regarding the mental health of their students. This plan to push us fully in person will have major impacts on the mental health of many students, leading to increased anxieties. Many students will not feel comfortable in their class. We've been thrown around so much this year that it is not fair to keep messing with our schedules and routines. AB days have become a sense of normal and routine. Please stop throwing us around. Let us keep a sense of normalcy. Thank you. Maddie.
My name is Layla Ames, and I'm a junior at Lincoln Way East as a high-achieving honor student with almost a 5.0 GPA, a member of 3 honor societies, 8 school activities and clubs, employed at 3 jobs. I speak on behalf of many students in my grade when I say returning to full in-person learning is inconsiderate and not in the best interest of your student body. To begin, many students, myself included, have taken on part-time jobs during our asynchronous learning days. Randomly returning to all in-person learning would create an abundance of stress and inconvenience for us. We would have to quit our jobs and burn those bridges for what? During consideration, my peers and I feel rather unheard. The issue of if we're getting enough schoolwork to do on our asynchronous learning days is completely irrelevant and untrue. Our mental health should be your top priority. The trauma and challenges that come with COVID-19 have taken and damaged everything we have. The unreliability of scheduling has led to anxiety and depression in our student body. It is not the asynchronous day that damages our work and mental health, but it is the in-school days. Going back every day would not make everything go back to normal because for us, school will never be normal again. Randomly finishing the school year fully in person would once again be throwing too much change on students who have dealt with enough. There are numerous students in our district who are in AP and honors courses who would fall behind if they were to switch to the online option. As an AP student myself, there would be no way I could pass an AP exam from a simple online course. For high-achieving students who wouldn't feel comfortable or be able to return to full in-person learning, Acellus isn't an option. The schedule switch would leave us trapped and truly benefits none of us. Finally, I find myself extremely disappointed and frankly disgusted with a lack of concern for the opinions of the student body. Absolutely no parent nor board member has any idea how hard this year has been for students, how detrimental the constant changes, unreliability, and scheduling has been on our mental health. Although instead of listening to us, it feels as though the school board focuses their attention on reelection and pleasing parents. Us students are the majority who would be affected by this schedule change, and if we stay fully in person isn't beneficial, then please listen. I'd love to speak to the school board on behalf of the student body. Thank you for taking the time to read.
Good morning. I am a senior at Lincoln Way East. I am concerned about the idea of returning 5 days a week. Currently, East is extremely crowded at only 50% capacity, even with many students choosing Acellus. The hallways are already too crowded. There is no way to maintain 6 feet, let alone 3 feet, even under teacher supervision. Some of my classes have desks that are already not 6 feet apart since we have returned. Having all the students back in school is not safe or wise. I already do not feel safe now, and this decision would negatively impact my schoolwork. It is exhausting and mentally draining to have to constantly change how we are learning this year. I have been a straight-A student my entire life, but since we kept changing school from online to in-person to online back to in-person, I have not been able to adjust properly. I have used my asynchronous days to catch up, but changing the schedule again will only hurt my grades and my morale, I know that mental health may not be the biggest concern with the board, but everyone has been through a really difficult year. I do not see the point in risking everyone's safety for only a few weeks. If a student tests positive, then every student in their vicinity must quarantine. As many as 4 to 6 students per class would be sent home. This would defeat the purpose of bringing all the students back. I am finally in a routine, and I have finally begun to feel less anxious about my education. I do not think changing the schedule so late in the year will do anything but harm the already fragile system that many students have finally created. I would like these concerns to please be read at the board meeting. Sincerely, Savannah Cushing.
Hello, my name is Olivia Ernst, and I'm a senior at Lincoln Way East. I am contacting you today about the upcoming board meeting and the impactful decisions being made this week about the future of the school year. These past few weeks, it has been hard to ignore the discussion surrounding the topic, and though all students and parents were given a survey to state their preference, I feel it is necessary for me to elaborate on my opinion and hopefully help voice the opinion of many others. I certainly appreciate the decision to send out a survey, as community opinion is very diverse and it is critical to take public opinion into consideration in situations like this. However, I believe there is much complexity to the issue, and many students, including myself, feel as though the nuance of their perspective cannot be conveyed through the survey responses provided to us. The options given to the student body were, according to the survey, to continue an AB schedule, to go back full-time, or to go to Acellus at an individual discretion. The issue with this, however, is that though many students feel for safety reasons that Acellus is their only option, it has become clear that Acellus is not an appropriate substitute for many classes, especially for those of us taking AP tests. The result of a large amount of students going to Acellus, which will likely happen if we go back full-time, is a net loss for the district. Students who opt out of their AP test due to lack of in-class preparation will be refunded for their test payment, and money spent by the school on those AP tests will have been wasted. Additionally, unprepared students who do choose to take their tests will likely have lower scores, causing problems for them in the college process and for the district's academic record. While students could better prepare for AP tests in a full-time school environment, the fact of the matter is that this is not a viable option for many students, and the majority has concerns with the safety of such an environment. Going back to school in person full-time, though not without its benefits, is an idea that is simply underdeveloped and would have many issues in actual execution. I speak for myself and for many of my peers when I say that I am concerned about the changes in distancing guidelines and student behavior that would have to occur for us to go back full-time. In a fully sized class of 20, with students spaced 3 feet apart as per updated CDC guidelines, I feel it is inevitable that we will suffer the same fate as earlier this year. There will simply be too many students who will eventually need to quarantine, and more students in a given space means that more students will have to be sent home for every student that has to quarantine. This could lead to entire classes with potentially being sent home, which will not only make it more likely for us to go back to online full-time, but will hinder the learning experience of students that have to go into quarantine. Though it is true that healthy young individuals are unlikely to suffer the worst from the virus, the concern for me lies with the idea that those of us with immunocompromised and otherwise susceptible loved ones will be put at risk. I often see it argued that the immunocompromised students should simply do Acellus and stay home at all times, but this denies them the opportunity to do the same education quality of life as the rest of their peers, simply because of their health conditions. Just as it is unfair for students with safety concerns to simply go to Acellus, it is unreasonable and alienating to expect at-risk students or those with at-risk loved ones to sacrifice their opportunities and quality of life so others can go to in-person school, especially when many immunocompromised people live with relatives who go to work and school on a daily basis and could spread it to them. Many feel that the time to fear the virus is over and that we must return to normalcy. And while I truly understand this sentiment, I feel it is not worth the potential consequences. Lincoln Way has already endured an unexpected and horribly tragic loss of a student to this pandemic, and I feel the greatest priority should be doing all we can to prevent something so tragic from ever happening again. In a time where new strains of coronavirus are being discovered and vaccines are still not yet available to the entire populace, coming back to school full-time with an entire student body seems to be too great a risk. The community is very divided on this issue, but I feel the concerns of students who feel in-person learning is not safe should be met with an appropriate alternative that meets our needs. Each option for learning this school year has its benefits and drawbacks, and there will never be a solution that makes every single person happy. But keeping people safe, students, teachers, loved ones, and all other members of the community is the first concern on my mind. I hope for schools across the world to soon be able to continue learning as we did before, but I feel now is simply not the right time, and the potential benefits cannot be worth the financial losses it could cause for the district, the decrease in student mental health and quality of life, and most of all, the potential losses of students, teachers, and their loved ones. I truly appreciate the opportunity to contact the board about this issue. It means a lot to me and many, many other students in the district who are contacting as well. I cannot speak for everyone, but I hope to make as many voices heard as I can. I cannot imagine how stressful the weight of such a decision must be, and I'm sure you are all extremely busy at the moment, so I appreciate you for giving me your time and effort to read this lengthy message. I hope the survey results will be taken into consideration and, if possible, released to the public for a better understanding. I also hope this email will further clarify the students' thoughts and concerns about this pressing matter. And I hope that our concerns will be voiced and given weight in the upcoming meeting. Thank you once again for your time and commitment. I wish you all the best.
My name is Nina Gentles, and I am a student at Lincoln Way East concerned about the return to school after spring break. In the past few days at school and over social media, I've witnessed students talking about their spring break plans to vacation out of the state or even out of the country. While traveling during the break is inevitable, I'd like to express that the return to school after traveling could be dangerous if not prevented. Many of the popular spring break locations will be teeming with tourists and travelers, and some areas have minimal to no mask and social distancing enforcement to prevent a mass outbreak. Additionally, since many minors will be last on the list to get the COVID vaccine, the spread of disease will be more prevalent, especially upon the return to school. As a precaution, I believe that students should be quarantined before returning after the break, which should include not resuming in-person classes immediately after April 5th. Returning after the quarantine period would assure the students have the ability to get tested and hinder the possible spread and introduction of potential new strains in our area. Furthermore, specific guidelines were mentioned in the updated public health guidance created by ISB and IDPH. Travel increases chances of spreading and getting COVID-19. Details on COVID travel recommendations by destination can be found on the CDC's travel page. The CDC currently requires testing of all international travelers before they enter the United States. Additionally, wearing a mask is required when traveling in, out of, or within the United States or any public conveyance, as well as in airports and public transport stations. The CDC also recommends that travelers get tested 3 to 5 days after travel and stay home for 7 days after travel. Even with the negative test, travelers should stay home for the full 7 days. And if you don't get tested, it's safest to stay home for 10 days after travel. Thank you for your time and consideration.
This is from Lex Dalseth. Hello, I am a junior at Lincoln Way West. I want you to know that some kids do not have the best luck, and unfortunate things will happen to them all the time. Some kids keep getting screwed over with these rules from COVID-19. From my perspective, I would prefer to not go back every day for the rest of the year. Here is why. I have 2 younger siblings that do not go to school every day, and they have the same quarantine rules. So if someone who sits around them tests positive, the 8 other kids that sit close to them have to quarantine for 14 days. My younger sister has already had to quarantine 2 times this year because of this rule, and she is only in 5th grade. It is so much harder for her to learn online every day when she is quarantined. Some kid could sit in the middle of the classroom. There would be 8 other students potentially around them, times 6 classes, plus lunch, plus advisory. So technically, 7 classes. That could be 56 students out because of 1 case. I would not want to get thrown into quarantine at the end of a school year and not right away after spring break from people who go on vacation over spring break, because if that is the case, I would have to quarantine at the beginning of coming back. That is my SAT opportunity. I need to take the SAT to get myself scholarship money because my parents cannot afford to pay for college. There is no good reason to come back every day and risk more people getting sick and sending 56 students per case. With 2 cases, that would even be 112 students. In December, I recall we went online because too many students were in quarantine. Well, and with only 15 positive cases, that would be 840 students out with this rule. Then we might as well just go back online again. Online schooling fully is not fun. There is no finals this year, so why would we stress coming back every single day? Yes, this has been a crazy year, and we would all like things to start going back to normal, but we have made it this far, and it's just not safe enough to return. In my opinion, it would be better to have a fresh start next year and let this school year ease out.
Hello, I wanted to send along this email for your consideration when deciding if we should go back to school full-time after spring break. I'm a freshman student athlete who is very involved in activities. I love my school and I can't wait until everything is normal again. However, I feel strongly that we need to stay hybrid until the end of this year. Yesterday, I was pulled out of class and sent home to quarantine until after spring break because a girl in my volleyball team tested positive for COVID. I was one of 2 kids identified as close contacts solely because of where I sat, wearing a mask, following all the protocols. Now I have to watch my next 3 volleyball games on the live stream from home while feeling perfectly healthy. And this is not even the first time I was forced to quarantine. Back in November, I was forced to quarantine because of where I sat in health class, already twice this year in a hybrid setting. I was forced to leave and miss out on school and activities through no fault of my own. Going back, everyone full-time is just additional risk for no reason. We have all had to make adjustments this year, and the hybrid setting has become normal for students now. If we are finally used to AB, why rush us into for the last few weeks? Academically, I have been working hard all year during this hybrid setting. I don't want to have to switch to Acellus after all of my effort because I feel unprotected by the large numbers. I understand that now the teachers are all vaccinated, and I'm really excited about that. It shows we're on the right track. But the kids still aren't, and that's who we're adding more of. Although kids are resilient and are for the most part asymptomatic, that doesn't mean that they can't have serious effects from the virus or take it home to someone who can't handle it. Since the state is opening up, more sports and activities can happen now. I am a soccer player, and I have been waiting for my entire life to finally be able to play for my school. But doubling the amount of kids puts unnecessary risk being sent home and jeopardizing our season. I want normal as much as anyone else. After missing all of the fun activities of my 8th grade year, including walking across the stage of graduation, and now all the football games and homecoming, and just eating cafeteria food with friends at a real lunch table, I truly believe that we should stay hybrid to finish out this year and come back in August with all the amazing parts of high school that we were missing.
Dear board members, I am writing this comment for consideration at the upcoming meeting at which it appears the district will be reviewing and reconsidering its current return to school plan in light of revised guidance from ISB and IDPH. I am hopeful that the board considers maintaining the current hybrid schedule for the following reasons. Placing students closer than 6 feet will very likely lead to greater numbers of students forced to quarantine. Any positive case could lead to as many as 3 to 4 other students per class required to be quarantined. This will be very disruptive to those students, especially as we near the end of the year with exams and AP exams scheduled. How will the district provide instruction to those in quarantine? High numbers of quarantine led district to go 100% remote last fall. We hope to avoid that again. Returning to full regular in-person at this time with spring break near without any proposed regular testing of students increases the risk of spread and quarantine. Students have had so many disruptions in the past year. While I desperately wish things could return to normal for our students, I fear that trying this now will only lead to more disruptions, stress, and disappointment. With sports coming back, I hope the district maintains the current model to give our kids the best chance of a consistent and somewhat successful end-of-year experience. It feels like they are finally in a bit of a groove, and it would be unfortunate to disrupt that in a rush to return with so few weeks left in the year. By next fall, most staff and many of the 16-year-old plus students will have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. Building to a full regular return next fall would be safer and less disruptive than yet another change this school year. Any full return at this time should be accompanied by a testing program. Many schools have implemented saliva-based testing for their students on a regular basis. This would help alleviate some of the quarantines that will inevitably occur with students less than 6 feet apart by quickly identifying potentially positive cases before they spread within the school. Does the district have a testing plan? I truly appreciate your consideration and the unprecedented challenges faced this year. Sincerely, Todd Hayden, parent of LWE sophomore.
Hello, I am the parent of a freshman and sophomore, and after we filled out the return to school survey, we examined our feelings about this as a family. As you discuss a possible return to school, full-time, in person, we ask that you consider and provide clarity on some of the following items. Number one, first and foremost, just because a full reopening can happen does not mean it should. We really hope that the input from the students is the driving force behind your decision. If possible, please share those survey results. Please take into consideration that each student has been affected by COVID differently. Some have lost loved ones, some have battled the virus themselves, some have had no personal experience with it, and each student's emotional and mental health are in various states. Forcing students to return full-time while this pandemic is still ongoing can and will create more and unnecessary stress and anxiety. Personally, our students have adjusted to the hybrid setup and are in a groove. They both feel strongly that it is best for them to finish out the year as it is. These kids have been through so much this past year. They are strong, resilient, and have made adjustments time and time again. But again, just because they can adjust doesn't mean they need to. Returning in person 5 days a week is a major change. As a parent, I'm not comfortable with the return of the entire student body when only the teachers have been vaccinated. We have been very careful this past year, and we are nearing the finish line, hopefully. We would much rather see a return in August when the majority of the population, students included, have been vaccinated and are fully protected. How will kids who have had to quarantine be taught? It seems that in the fall, it was predominantly self-study, and we know that some kids fell behind due to this. Will there be new, clear, delineated quarantine instruction procedures? Will the students' current workload change accordingly if they're in school 5 days a week? Both of my kids feel they have twice as much work now than they would if they were in school. We don't believe being at school every day with the current amount of homework is even sustainable. Though you offer the option to stay remote, it is my understanding that that is only via the Acellus program. So my kids would have to switch from a curriculum that they've been doing all year for 2 months. And how does this curriculum switch affect their GPA, their coursework? Both of my kids have honors and AP classes and multiple AP exams in May. April should be spent reviewing these exams, but if they chose the remote option, they would miss the review with their teachers and classmates that they've been with all year. An ideal remote option would be streaming via WebEx or recording in-person classes. Frankly, if we're understanding the remote option correctly, it's not viable for our kids, and therefore we are backed into a corner. In fact, it is because of their honors and AP classes we did not choose Acellus in August in the first place. So now either they return full person against our wishes, or they suffer academically. My sophomore said to me, quote, "I want to go back to school, but only back to normal school. This still isn't normal. It's been hard enough not having socialization and following all these protocols. Now would be the entire student body in a controlled environment. It's just added stress I don't need. I'd much rather finish the year as it is and start with a clean slate in August, hoping for a better normal by then." Clearly, our family prefers to just leave well enough alone and finish the year in a hybrid setting. We see no reason to rush the return for the last 7 weeks, forcing the kids to adjust again and adding stress and anxiety to an already stressful and exhausting situation. We are hopeful that by midsummer, everyone is able to be vaccinated, that there might be herd immunity, and by August, we can give these kids the high school experience that they so deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration. Destiny Headley.
And with that, it's 7:30. I'll just conclude by saying that at least the rest of the letters in my stack, these are all in favor of keeping the hybrid model.
Me too.
don't know if you guys. I'm
No,
sorry?
I have one from, my last two are students, and then I have one from someone else who's running for the school board.
I will say, thank you to everyone who might be watching that sent an email in. I tried to get back to most of you, and I know other members are writing back as well. A lot of them got flooded in late today, and we tried to get to a lot of them, but I don't know that we did. But please know that they were all read, and they all are going to be taken into consideration when we're discussing this tonight. So, thank you very much, and moving on.
Strategic plan.
Dr. Tingley.
Okay, a review on our strategic long-range plan. I think many of you were in the room 4 years ago this past December when we kicked off our long-range strategic planning. I think it's safe to say we're in a much different place now than we were back then. With the help of Bob Madonia, we worked with the board and community members to set a plan for 5 years in 6 different areas. Tonight, I'm just going to give a brief overview of some of the progress over the last year. There'll be a link on board docs to a comprehensive update where we have been at the end of each year. And the next year, in December, we will conclude the 5 years. We hope to be in person at East and invite all the members back. Go through that and then look for direction from the board on where to go next. Dr. Bob Madonia, former superintendent, Frankfurt 157C, helped facilitate this process and did so at no cost to the district, so we do appreciate him for his help. So a couple of highlights. You know, we had to begin with the end in mind, and our first goal dealt with finance. If you think back 4 years ago, until we stabilized the day-to-day finance, we couldn't have accomplished anything in any of those other areas. And so the first goal from the Finance Committee was restore fund balances to provide and maintain fiscal stability. Here's just a look at our year-end fund balances and the progress that we've made since the beginning of our strategic plan. So this was first and foremost a priority, so we were able to develop additional programming and some of the other items that we will discuss this evening. But financial goal 1 has continued to be met, and we continue to improve upon. Then financial goal 2, demonstrate fiscal responsibility while maintaining current student programs. You'll see we were not only able to maintain our student programs, which was the goal at that time, but we've also been able to add and enhance because of the fiscal responsibility that has taken place. On to curriculum and assessment, continue to update pathways for college and career readiness to meet the needs of all students. Just in the past year, we've added dual credit and dual enrollment courses for 2021, fire science, EMS, teaching internships through St. Francis, American Music, Microsoft Office applications. I know we're working right now with Governor State to add even more next year. Over the past 4 years, we've continued to increase our dual credit AP offerings, and that's something that's been a focus for the board and the administration. Curriculum and assessment goal 2, enhance curriculum with innovative instruction, assessment, and the infusion of social emotional learning standards. This past year, a district-wide social emotional task force was created to address the social emotional learning needs of our students during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's something we're currently working on as we plan for a return for all students for next fall. Additional progress on the goals. Social workers and counselors have used Panorama, a universal screener survey for SEL, to survey and assess and address the SEL needs of all of our students. The Lincoln Way Equity Leadership Team engaged in Deep Equity as Diversity and Awareness Cultural Sensitivity training program that we've done over the last 12 months. This summer, administration participated in the Administrative Academy titled Leading for Equity and Excellence in the School Setting. On to buildings and grounds. Once again, until we had stabilized our finances, we had gone several years without addressing many of our capital projects. And so one of the goals of the buildings and grounds was to develop a capital plan and operations and maintenance plan Since we've started this plan, we've reinvested between $3 and $4 million annually into capital projects to keep our facilities where they need to be. And the 2020 progress over this last year, we partnered with DLA Architects to complete a complete mastery facility assessment, includes roofs, parking lots, HVAC systems. That was presented to the board. That'll be a 10 to 15 year project for us. We've scheduled the summer of 2021 capital projects that will begin in June. Enhanced school security plans for students and buildings. Since the beginning of this plan is we've done our secure entrances at all of our campuses, but another thing we've done is complete installation of brand new security cameras and security systems at all 3 of our buildings. Just over the last year, we completed the installation for wireless outdoor network, allowing for an expansion of security camera systems to all our athletic facilities and concession stands. Prior, we did not have those. The ability to live stream events that take place on the stadium field, which is going to come in very handy now during our COVID, and then the use of point-of-sale technology in the outdoor concession stands so they're able to take credit or debit cards. In HR, promote continuous staff development for all employees, and this past spring and summer, staff completed multiple training sessions revolving around implementation of technology, focusing on the use of Microsoft Office 365, also WebEx. Now, all of our teachers are skilled in managing Office 365, Microsoft Teams, and WebEx. And then recruit and retain qualified staff with diverse experiences. We hired 36 teachers for the 21-22 school year. Many of those were because we brought back an additional program. We moved Bridges from Lincoln Way area special education back to Lincoln Way. Hired teachers, moved some of our teachers into that program. It's been very successful. We have over a 93% teacher retention rate. We've moved our health insurance, dental, and life insurance out of the affiliation and back to Lincoln Way, and we've managed our own now. We are self-insured. Continue to work with college and university partners to actively recruit a more diverse workforce. That's done through our student-teacher programming. And work with private and public sector partners to ensure all Lincoln Way District 210 employees or staff had access to a COVID vaccine. Community public and relations, unify the district and build public trust through board and stakeholder communications. Those of you who've watched our meetings in the past, we've had significant upgrades to our video system, our audio, and so we've done that so to better communicate our meetings. And then progress also on Goal 1, the state of the district. We've recorded that. It will be on our website. It's actually on the link tonight. We provided an update with finance, curriculum and instruction, and technology. Goal number 2 for community relations, enhance the district brand, identify opportunities to engage the stakeholders, and we continue to participate in community events. Did some via WebEx or Zoom this year. Look forward to getting back out here over the summer and fall, but the district continues to use multiple forms of communication. Technology was to create a technology plan that prepares students for college life and career readiness. This year has really done that, I think, for all of our students. Nearly 1,700 student laptops were also purchased with funds through the CARES Act that we'll be able to utilize next year. 50% of the staff laptops will be replaced with newer models. Goal 2, explore, develop, and maintain the infrastructure that will support the needs of students and staff. Our bandwidth has increased to allow for one-to-one, and all the network switches have been replaced to allow for that flow of communication. It's been a successful 4-year period. I certainly hope we're able to get together again next December. Thank our community members who participated. You know, we ended up, there were 119 original participants in our strategic planning session. And typically when Dr. Madoni would do that, he would have between 30 and 50. So we were the largest group he'd ever done, and it was a successful kickoff. I think the process has gone very well. I think it was good to have those targets as we moved through some of the challenging times, and certainly now in a better place, and look forward to sharing a recap and deciding, you know, a next direction next December. That concludes my presentation. Yes, sir. We're good. State of the district, if you want to watch the state of the district, you can, but we will not watch that right now. 18-minute presentation, people can click on their own. We'll also send that home send that home to parents if they do want to watch that update.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the regular meeting minutes of February 18th, 2021, approval of the closed meeting minutes of February 18th, 2021, approval to hold closed session meeting minute summaries from June 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, approval of the payrolls of February 19th and March 5th, 2021, approval of the District 210 advisory minutes from November 9th, 2020, approval of the Board of Education meeting schedule for 21-22. Would anyone like anything pulled from the consent agenda for discussion? If not, I'd like a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion. I have a second. Linda, if you could open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the action items. Presentation of invoices for February 19th, 2021 through March 18th, 2021.
Motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $1,960,398.39 dated March 18th, 2021.
Second. The AQI Mechanical Systems, the HVAC repairs, was that one school or multiple schools?
The vote is open.
Oh, sorry.
The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the treasurer's report.
Thank you. For this month, for the Treasurer's Report ending February 28th, the district recognized $2.1 million in revenue, while we expended $6.4 million, creating a cash balance of $21 million. This includes $7.2 million returned from the affiliation. We did receive some additional funds from them over the last month. As far as the monthly cash flow is concerned, we had a negative variance of $43,800. We had less revenue than expected. Part of that was to do with the fact that we did get the parking permit refunds done. So that was about $101,000 of revenue returned back to students and parents. Overall, when you look at the cash flow comparative on a 4-year basis over the from 20 to 21, we are $18 million better standing position than in the prior year. We have no outstanding tax anticipation warrants. As far as revenue, we continue to trend behind. We're about 2.1% behind where we'd expect to be. As far as non-tax revenue, we could be as short as $5.1 million or 1.7%. We're unsure where we'll be on the tax levy, how that all shakes out with doing 2 payments versus 4. But if we get our taxes in about the same method as in prior years, we could be, like I said, on non-tax revenue about $5 million short. The good news that is on expenditures, we're continuing to track about 7.4% below where we normally are, and we estimate we could be as much as $8 million under budget on that. Overall, excluding our transfer from health insurance, we anticipate to have a small deficit at this point, but that's really going to be dependent upon the tax levy, which, if it is, will balance out next year because that's just a timing issue on how those taxes are paid. With that, I'd answer any questions on the treasurer's report.
Any questions for Brad?
Yeah, I just had a question on the cash flow report that's included, and what is the assumption that you're making in there for property taxes? Because I know in the revenue section on your memo, you indicated, 18 million could be short, given the timing of when Will County taxes come in now. I didn't know what the cash flow report reflected.
Yeah, so we're doing the same analysis on the cash flow. What we're anticipating is worst case, where we think we could have around 25% each coupon. So we'll have a big chunk we followed in June, then not again until August, and then September, then November. And where traditionally we get almost 50% between the June payments, and then, of course, August is pretty small. But so that's what we're anticipating, about 25% per coupon.
So that's reflected.
That's in the cash flow, yep.
So we still wouldn't need to draw on the tax anticipation warrants then?
That is correct. And I've also taken that out through FY '22, and we still are fine through that.
With the recent stimulus package, are you anticipating any additional revenue? And it might not fall into this year, but,
Yeah,
are you-
so we've gotten early notification of the next round of some of the stimulus or assistance coming to districts. We're going to be getting about $524,000. Here again, though, that's a spend and replenish. We do get up to 3 years to spend that funds. We're currently working on plans of what would those funds be for. But whether we'll spend them before the end of the fiscal year or not, is undetermined at this point.
So that's not reflected in the revenue
No.
number at all?
Uh-uh.
But we're looking through our expenses to see anything that would offset that for this year.
Right. Go ahead. I think Dr. Tingley wants to comment.
Yeah, so what we're doing now is, because it has to be spent on COVID, bringing kids back to school. So one of the things that we already know we're going to have to do is order additional tables. So there's an example. Would come through Rich's budget, but at the same time then can be replenished with that money. So we're not, this is money that is going to be utilized to help offset the additional costs of COVID. We would be bringing any large plans back to the board to say, this is what we're going to use it for. We know that we'll be using some of it for curriculum development this summer to develop curriculum for math, English, and reading for the first 6 to 9 weeks of next year. So that will be used through some of the funding. But in terms of large projects, anything would go to the board. I know there are several districts, and I talked to Rich about this, depending upon the total amount being utilized, are looking at overhauling HVAC systems, which is also included in our 10-year plan. So that's something that we'll continue to have discussions to determine what the total amount is. We anticipate more money coming in the next 9 to 12 months, and that's something that we will discuss with the board, just like we did with utilizing the money to purchase the computers in the last round.
And then just on the expense side, I know one of the things we've kind of had here is most of the sports have come back now, and I know a large portion on the expense side was salary for coaches, et cetera, that we weren't sure if they would go forward. Is that reflected in these numbers now? Still with the 7 or 8 million less on the expense side?
Yes, and we're anticipating with the sports coming back on the limited basis that we will be using a large majority, coaching stipends on a substantial amount, and then some on, officials and et cetera.
But even coming back, the official line, we won't be where we had originally budgeted
have 3 home football games rather than potentially 6,
Right.
basketball 6 rather than 15, so, yeah.
I noticed also on here that the expenditures, that there was an increase for the seller's licenses. So for the stimulus funds, can a portion of that be used, or are we gonna use I think I saw something here about the CARES grant?
Yes, so we've used funding on the additional cells in 2 ways. One, we got some funding through Will County CARES, so we use that, and then the other just doing the straight CARES.
Any further questions for Brad? Not, looking for a motion to accept the treasurer's report for February 2021 as presented.
So moved.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to student activities.
Student activities in your backup materials for the month ended February 28th, 2021. The total student activity fund balance is $1,916,539.28, with revenues of $42,797.51 and expenditures of $147,174.94. We had one account in the negative that has been since brought back into the positive. And, we've now completed our winter portion. We are now in the modified fall session, and then we'll follow through with spring. So the principals have done a good job maintaining these balances as we've gone through our abbreviated seasons.
Any questions on student activities? If not, I'm looking for a motion to accept the student activities report as presented. I have a motion and a second. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on, thank you. Employment, Mr. Schiffbauer.
Good evening. Under employment, we have Cynthia Ferdinand and Dale Schmidt, both bus drivers. I ask the board to approve the employment report as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Linda, if you open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on to resignations and leaves.
Under resignations and leaves, under resignations, we have Luke Fisher, special services teacher, Lincoln Way West. And under leaves, we have Jeanette Katura-Holly requesting an FMLA and a parental leave. Alina Gary requesting an FMLA leave, and Stacy Griffin asking for a parental leave. I ask the board to approve the resignations and leaves as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved?
First, second, and third. If you would open the vote, please, Linda.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on, last to retirements.
All right, under retirements, we have Diane Hendrickson, Financial Secretary, Lincoln Way Central. I ask the board to approve this retirement as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. If you would open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to probationary teacher non-renewals.
We need to, I will read the resolution for the non-renewal of non-final year probationary teachers. Whereas the following teachers have been employed by the Board of Education as non-final year probationary teachers for the 2021 school term: Vincent Manzella, Jacinia Columbus, Gregory Rizzo, and Tyler Jackson. And whereas the board has heard and considered the recommendation of its administration with regard to said probationary teachers, whereas the board has determined that said probationary teachers shall be dismissed at the end of the 2021 school term and not reemployed for the 21-22 school term in accordance with Section 2411 of the Illinois School Code. Now therefore it be resolved, the Board of Education of Lincoln Way Community High School District 210 of Will and Cook Counties, Illinois, is as follows. Recital of this resolution are true and correct, incorporated herein by this reference. Probationary teachers identified above are hereby dismissed effective at the end of the 2021 school term and shall not be reemployed as teachers at Lincoln Way Community High School District 210 for the 21-22 school term. Superintendent is hereby authorized and directed to give said probationary teachers written notice of dismissal and non-renewal. Sustainability in the form attached to this resolution, Exhibit 1, and incorporated in this, by this reference, by regular mail and by certified mail upon receipt request at least 45 days before the last student attendance day of the 2021 school term. Superintendent designee shall personally deliver a copy of that notice to teacher within the time frame listed above. Shall be in full force and effective immediately upon its adoption. I ask the board to approve this resolution as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second? Any discussion?
What is generally the reason that,
So these are first-year teachers, so these are sectioning, so they're non-tenured. In some cases, depending upon how things work, they end up being hired back and brought back to the board prior to the start of the school year. But for this, the way the sectioning breaks out, we have to, 45 days prior to the end of the year, release them rather than just hope the sections come about. So the March meeting typically, there's 3 to 5 has been consistently. Some get brought back if the sections warrant. Some, we help find employment elsewhere, and with the teacher shortage, our teachers never have an issue finding employment. Yes. But all of these are first-year teachers, correct, Mr. Schiffbauer? Maybe one is a 2?
No, that is correct. They're all first
All
year.
first-year teachers. Yep. Good question, though.
Any further questions or discussion? Not, Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to registration fees for the 21-22 school year.
Included in your backup materials is registration fees for the upcoming year. We'd recommend the board approve the fees as presented. The one change is the addition of a $30 technology insurance fee for freshman and sophomore classes. It aligns with the 5-year financial 5-cast that Brad has put together. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Mrs. Stone did call around. Other districts had not changed any fees significantly over the past year, and so our fees were consistent with surrounding districts as well.
Any questions regarding the registration fees?
and this includes the laptop, right?
Correct.
That's the
There's no
$30.
additional, I saw
That's
the
that
technology
$30, yeah.
insurance.
Yep.
Okay, but there's nothing else on it.
No.
Even though I know I should know, what does BTW stand for?
Oh, that's behind the wheel, yeah, yeah.
Been a while.
Any further discussion or questions? With that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the registration fees for 21-22 as presented. Motion and a second by Mrs. Janice Doyle and Mr. Kirking. Linda, if you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
We're done, right? No, I'm just kidding. Moving on, school reopening.
I was asked by the board to place this on the agenda for discussion or action, and so included in the backup materials is some of the revised guidance that occurred here over the last 2 weeks with ISB and IDPH. The two significant changes is they removed the limitation of 50 people in any one given indoor space, and they allowed for the change from 6 feet to 3 feet for students. We sent out a simple survey to students, parents, and staff. Those results are included in the backup materials. It is a decent sampling. We did parents through Skyward so that each email address could only respond one time. We did the students and the teachers through Microsoft, same type of deal. So that, statistically speaking, there was a solid sample. You can see the responses are 60-40, 40-60. I mean, not really enough either way. As I've said many times, this year has been a 50-50 year. And regardless of what direction, there are people that like it and people that don't. And so we met with our reopening plan, which included, our nurses, maintenance staff, teachers, principals, and talked about some of the logistics. Students and staff, regardless, we're going to continue to wear masks. Students would be seated 3 to 6 feet apart in classrooms. We can do that. 6 feet apart in lunch spaces. We can do that because we can use additional areas throughout our building. Each bus route limited to 50 people. We checked our A-day route and our B-day route to ensure ridership wouldn't exceed 50 if they were to go together. We can do that. There's updated guidance and close contact from Will County. That's something when I say we, the superintendents have been asking for. We don't understand why CDC was one thing, but IDPH another. So they have now moved the close contact down to 10 days. CDC is 7 days with a test after 5 if you're asymptomatic. So that would still put students out 7 days. I just simply listed a couple of the concerns. I listed the students and staff and who would have to quarantine and who wouldn't, but a couple concerns in no particular order. Additional students may be forced to quarantine, possible impact on extracurricular activities, students electing to learn fully remote, travel over spring break resulting in a potential spike, and possible need to change back to learning models. A couple options, and there are several. We could stay blended, we could continue, go to full-time in person on April 6th, we could come back April 15th following the SAT. On the 13th, we could continue blended and come back on Monday the 19th. So just some options. On Monday of this week, early in the week, we were at one case at one case at Central, one case at East. I know we've jumped to 13 at Central. I think we were 7 or 8 at East, and several now quarantined. We're around 50 at Central, and in this particular case, had we been in every day, the quarantine would have likely doubled because those students did attend school, present symptoms, would have been likely within 6 feet and had forced additional quarantine. That's just the math of it. It would have been about between 20, 24 per student, depending upon where they sat in the classroom. So that is a concern as we're heading into SAT and our testing. That, for me, is a primary concern. I do believe that CDC in the future, whether it's very near future or not, is going to remove or reduce some of the quarantine restrictions. I talk to superintendents across the country weekly, throughout the state weekly as well, and there are districts that are all in. And they say the majority of their quarantines are due to close contact in classrooms, and they have not seen transmission from close contact in the classroom. And that's across the board. That's Oklahoma, that's Nebraska, Florida, and down in Shanahan, Reed Custer, talking with superintendents, kids have to go home for the 14 days. Vast majority of the time do not end up testing positive. So there are states that have gone away from the quarantine. If the close contact occurs, wearing a mask 3 feet apart, 3 to 6 feet apart, because they haven't seen the transmission. Individual districts have done some of that. We're not to that point yet in Illinois, but I'm anticipating the CDC at some point reducing those restrictions. And with that, I'll answer any questions. I know everybody has thoughts on this. My job's to try and provide information. If you need any additional information, I'll be happy to provide it. Would we be ready to go back? Yes, we could. Would it be safe? I believe it would be safe. The considerations and concerns you've all heard and read, and those are mine as well. But we have to decide, is the risk worth the reward? And so, our concern of the administration would be the additional quarantine and students having to miss additional time.
I guess I'll start with one thing. I did sort of take a little bit of an issue with the survey, in that 65% of students said that they would prefer to remain on the AB hybrid, and 4% of the students said that if we were to return to school, they would have to move to Acellus. I think that that's inaccurate, and I think that that question should have been a follow-up question, because even when I tried to answer that question, I was talking to my daughter, I think that those kids, we don't have an accurate, basically, number of kids that would move to Acellus, because most of those kids felt that they would choose to stay AB, and they didn't pick that other one. So my thought was the survey should have said, question 1, let's stay in AB, and then the next option would be return, and then a separate question would say, if we go back full day, how many of you would switch to Acellus? I think, just by judging my own daughter, all of her friends, our number of kids that would move to Acellus or would feel that they are forced to move to Acellus would be quite higher than 4%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree with that
Okay.
assessment. My question was going to be, do we have to have a motion before we have discussion, or can we just go into discussion?
We don't. I mean, anybody, any board member can make a motion at any time.
Okay. So I definitely agree with that. That's one of the things I was going to bring up about the survey. The other thing I would say is, when you're looking at the student response and you factor in 65% stay AB and the 4% switch, you had 69%. And if you really take the remote learners that are staying remote out of the denominator, you have over 75% of the students electing that they do not want to switch from stay AB. So it isn't 60-40, because from my standpoint, when I was thinking about what the survey results were, I thought it was the parent response was about what I was expecting. The staff response was about what I was expecting. The student response, I think, was a little bit, was a lot higher than I was expecting to remain in the current situation than what my initial going in thought was.
I'd like to add to that too, Scott. It's funny, I looked at it this way: how many students pretty much wanted to limit their exposure? And the students that wanted to limit their exposure, if you add up the survey, you have 9% that went remote, because this is high school, so these students would normally be remote, right? 9%, the 4% that said that they would switch over, and then 65. So I looked at it and came up with 78% that says that I'm not comfortable with school as it is right now. And this has been my choice. I've either decided to stay home, or I decided to come back in hybrid. And if you guys go all the way back in, then I'm looking at, so now we're looking at over 3/4 of our students. And to add to that, I read most of the emails, I did. And first I have to say, I have to commend these students. I did a lot of schooling, but it's very rarely I wrote to administration, and especially when I was in high school. So some of the emails were so eloquently stated that actually tells you that we are doing a great job. Some of them were set out, obviously, they are masters at English because they're set out in outline form, they're indented, A, B, C, they know. So as far as I'm concerned, I was completely, I have to applaud them for that. And just so those that are watching want to let you know that we didn't get one student to say, I want to go back in, of the tons of emails that we received. We had a couple of parents, but that was it. And so I want to say one of the things that resonated with me the most is that they felt that they are not heard. They felt that they're the ones that have to deal with the safety issues. Yes, our administrators and our teachers do as well, but they're the ones that are experiencing the anxiety. They are the ones that have gone remote, come back in, go back remote, hybrid. Now we're talking about bringing them back out. And I think that we need to look at that, because trust also has a lot to do with performance. And if we lose our the trust of our biggest asset, which is our students and our administration, I think we ultimately fail them.
I have a question. How many of the feeder districts are back full-time, full class, lunchroom, buses?
I think all of them are now. If they haven't, I know all will here by the end of spring.
How are they performing?
I can't speak to them. In terms of,
Have you heard of any major outbreak? Anybody have to shut down? Anybody?
no shutdowns, but I do know they have quarantine, that's all I
Sure,
know.
but I mean, you're gonna have, we have quarantine in the employment. I mean, it's just
Sure.
nature of the beast. So, the K through 8 have been able to, I'll use the term, successfully
Sure.
be in class and
From-
integrate it and feed their students and get them in buses back and forth and.
Yep.
Okay. And then I'm a little confused on the quarantine numbers, just to kind of understand. I find it fascinating, mostly because it comes from the state of Illinois, but that was an aside. Is that it's still a 14-day quarantine. You mentioned 10.
So their latest guidance, they said 10.
Okay,
They followed-
guidance is the word, though, right?
Yes.
It's guidance, okay. So, go ahead, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make
And
sure
then
you
they
said the word.
followed up, to clarify, you should say 14 if it's students, but the previous email said 10, and the CDC is 7 after 5 days with a test.
Okay, so it's 5, so you're out for 5 days and you get a test. How does it go to 7?
The results, probably.
Okay, but I've had.
That's the CDC. I don't know. You'd have
Well,
to ask them.
I'm just asking, again, it's
Yeah.
this discussion period here, so we might as well just get it out there. That, you can get a rapid test. I mean, you go in and, I mean, we,
But the
So are there
rule
certain
says,
tests
even
there-
if you take a rapid test after 5, you still quarantine
so the
for
rapid
7
test
days.
tells you after 5 that you don't have it, you still have to sit there for 2 more days?
I didn't,
Yes.
I
And
didn't
then,
make
and
the
then,
rules
hold on,
yet.
and then you have to be retested?
No,
Oh, so it takes 2 days to prove that the test was right?
I don't know.
I'm asking.
I don't know.
Okay, but that's the math then?
That is the published document.
Okay.
Rich, I think what it
Well,
is.
my name's
I'm
Joe.
sorry, I'm sorry, Rich.
He's much better looking.
I'm sorry. What I mean is that, what I think they're saying is because COVID is a virus, it doesn't present itself just because you rapid test. I could rapid test negative today, but if I've been exposed, there could still be an incubation period. And so I think that's the thought behind it.
I understand that. I understand. I actually sit on a hospital board as well. So, but because it is a virus, you rapid test at 8 o'clock in the morning, you go through the Dunkin' Donut drive-through, the test is actually null and void. Because the second you've re-exposed yourself back out into the public world, you could be picking that up from a variety of different things. So it's just the whole concept of, I'm just trying to understand, because part of the communication was that, well, I could be out for 10 days. I was just trying to make sure I understood what that truly meant, if it was 5 days with a test, but you get tested, you still have to sit out for 2 more, so is it 7 calendar days? Is it really 5 calendar days with a test? Is that, how does that work? And then I find it interesting, just really interesting, that the K through 8 feeder schools have been back.
You do know, though, that, like, I have 152 students a day, whereas a K through 8 might have 20.
I understand that
So
they
that's,
both have
it's not
unique-
even the same.
Well, but they
world.
put them all in a bus, and they get them back and forth in a tin can, back and forth from their home to school and back again. And they feed them. And I understand that they're in a classroom, so they're more
They're
contained.
contained, yeah.
So there's that aspect of it, but they are also a decade younger. And, you know, that there could be a better way to, you know, you might have a more challenge with a 6-year-old than a 16-year-old.
In terms of compliance?
No, it's
Or
actually the reverse.
in terms of compliance, is that what you mean, like
I'm just
mask
saying in
compliance
general,
or in general?
Just that I would think that, you know, and the kids, you know, they have much more limited options. I mean, I understand there's different dynamic models. Full disclosure, my wife works at District 122, so I get to hear the stories on a daily basis. But they haven't shut down yet. And so I'm just trying to find out if there's a marriage between the two that says, hey, we've got an example in our community that all the feeder schools, a little different, they're not moving from class to class, the hallway issue, I understand, but that, but if the masks are up and we're doing the right distancing, and to Scott's point earlier that, and actually the CDC says the exact same thing, that the schools aren't necessarily the super spreader events that, you know, seem to be the issue. We have some local precedents that says, yeah, this can be done.
I just don't agree with the scale.
I
I mean, that's
understand.
really, that's where
I'm not going to argue that point.
can't.
I understand that they move around and there's different
Yeah.
models, but, you know, I'm just stating that.
No,
piece
I
of
understand.
it.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't think that it's comparable. I don't think it's comparable at all.
Yeah, so.
I would take
yeah,
exception with the phrase "at all." I mean, it's
school.
classroom, there's
It's a
students,
school,
they're
and
going
there's
in a bus,
teachers.
there's different risks. I mean, when you throw a bunch of 6 through 13-year-olds in a bus, that right there in and of myself, I find fascinating, is even allowed if everything is as treacherous as it is stated.
Wow.
You know, that's right up there with an airplane. But, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, there's some differences, right? But I get the general point of it. I mean, we're having this discussion because they changed the social distancing rules to 3 to 6 feet. But the one big thing is they didn't change the contact tracing rules. So whether we can't anticipate that they're going to change it. Some states have. Our state has not. So that's one of the big probably risks that we have to consider. And I think we heard a lot of it from the students, and quite frankly, there's a lot of things going on here. You have the SAT, you have all the AP tests, and the students are finally getting back into their sports. And I think, as you talk about, the difference is when they're 6 feet apart and we're in the blended model, if someone comes into the school, like last week, how many cases were there at Central? Maybe 1 or 2. So everything was trending well, and now there's 13. Those students aren't impacting anyone on the contact tracing because they're 6 feet apart in school. So maybe on the bus, maybe they're definitely with the sports, they could be contacted. But there's going to be a lot more students that are going to be impacted because you're sitting within that 6 feet range now. So that's the one risk. And, as a parent, I think I want my kid back in school. The thing that I'm having a hard time with is I think not only that risk factor you have to get over, it's the structural issue of how we have things set up right now, and that's Acellus. So when you're talking about these students who do not feel comfortable, whether it's for their own health reasons, whatever reason it is, or they have an at-risk parent or something like that, they have to change from the curriculum that they are in currently to go remote. and we're going to be making a lot of students have to make a really tough decision. And you hear it a lot from these students who have AP classes. They're coming up on doing all the review and everything like that. They would be almost driven to, consider their academics and move in that, and staying in that class, even if they're have some concern there. The other thing is when you're looking at, and, the difference is a good thing. I looked at Naperville, 203, was that your old district? But they're K through 12, right? So when you look at they are making a distinction between how they're going in school at the younger grades versus in the high school where they're going to a block schedule and maybe not doing lunch. I know District 99. So a lot of these schools that are saying they're going back full-time are going to block schedules. So yes, they might have longer classes, but they're only doing 4 classes a day. So, we have to also compare apples to apples. And this is one of my big, holdups here is the structure, the Acellus, and making kids at the end of the school year have to make this decision. And, our whole thing is, everyone should have the same opportunities, and that's the one driving thing. The other thing is, a lot of those school districts are live streaming, and, I looked at you can look on board docs, District 99, which is Downers Grove, has a good thing written up. They can if they choose remote right away, they can switch back, so they can watch their, their class. And so a lot of these schools are going back. I think it might be the same case with 230.
That's what mine is
even though
too.
they're full, they're full in person, a lot of the kids aren't going back. They're staying home, so they're more spread out. In our case, these kids, if they don't want to go into Acellus, we're going to have fuller classrooms as well. So, I think structurally, I'm not saying that, the Acellus thing worked out from, full-time, and maybe if we went back at the semester, but I think that's just a structural thing right now that we have. And maybe Dr. Tingley knows of schools that have a similar structure to ours that are considering it, but, that's just one of the big risks to me is treating our students, giving all our students the same opportunity.
And piggybacking on that Acellus thing, did we figure out how we were going to handle classes like foods, American Originals, sociology, college writing through JJC? Those classes are not on Acellus.
A couple of them are not, and we would work our way through student by student, just like we have throughout the year when students would go to Acellus. So for some of them, we've used different platforms other than Acellus to make sure there was something for those students. But that would be something we would work through individually.
And did you work out the college writing one
College
through
writing,
JJC?
we would be able to work it out, yes, because we're talking 6 weeks, term papers, those sort of things.
The other thing that I like to bring up too is that there's we can't compare high schoolers to elementary. High schoolers are thinking about college, and they're thinking about examinations, they're thinking about standardized testing, they're thinking about how do I navigate that, how do I keep my scores at a certain level, how do I master this AP class. 7th, 8th graders, 5th graders are not thinking about that. So once we start, one of the things that resonated through all the letters was that, please don't throw something else new at me. But what I think is, I too as a parent, I have a student right now that is a student that's a sophomore, and she does need to be back. However, the risk does not, for our family, doesn't outweigh that. But at the same time, I think what they're really missing, I'm so glad sports is back. She's a sports player, so that's coming back to some normalcy. If we could, I talked to Scott, he said, we're looking at maybe a prom. I think that if we go back, we're going to possibly eliminate or impact other things that we could have that create memories that we're going to try to do. Like if, for instance, we come back and we have to quarantine, then we would have to call off certain things. And so that we could plan for effectively to create those memories, because memories are not created in the classroom. I understand that. Yes, they're here for education, but we're only talking about 6 weeks. And we've just played ping pongs with administration and with these students as well. I don't think we're prepared for it.
Go ahead.
Okay. I definitely sit on the side of we should be in school, but I agree with all of you. Meaning, the change from 6 feet to 3 feet doesn't really change the way we voted in September. So if next week they change the quarantine rules, I think we have a board meeting and we talk about it then. Because right now, this quarantine thing, we could turn into a train wreck in a matter of a week, in my opinion. So I fully believe the kids should be in school, but I think the 3-foot change, that the change needs to be the contact tracing. That's what's got to change. And if it's next week, we have another meeting before April.
Could I ask, do you remember approximately going back to the fall after Halloween? And I know the dynamic has changed a little bit because the teachers have been taken out of the mix, hopefully, because most of them have all been vaccinated now. But how many students approximately, what was the number that we got to, that we finally had to call it and send everybody remote?
7 something?
It was a parade
We
the
had-
first week of November out the front door.
Yeah, the quarantine number was several hundred in each, we were at several hundred. Positive cases, we were up to, how many, 70-something, Doctor?
About 75, 80 cases.
Okay,
So-
75, 80 district-wide, but the quarantine was several hundred at that point.
To piggyback on what Rich is saying, I would like to see as much in-person instruction as possible. I want the students to be in school. I'm a parent, I've got a freshman, and I want him back.
But he is back every other day.
Well, I want him back full-time. And he actually would like to be back full-time, he told me. I don't know if he was just trying to, he's going to be driving soon, he's looking for a car. Maybe he was just trying to say what Dad wanted to hear. But, I mean, like you say, when we're talking about getting into early and mid-April here, if we're forced to go back remote, which if everybody's back in school, it might not take 70 cases to get a large quarantine to where it becomes impractical to have them impractical to stay in person, where if we have to switch to full remote again, then we're basically done for the year, because I don't think we're just going to go, everybody's going to go home for 3 weeks and then we're going to come back for 1 week.
And it's the domino effect with the sports and clubs, too.
And
So-
we got to remember,
But just to finish, if there is some revision to where, I wouldn't be opposed to having the discussion again if they change the quarantine rules.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I know.
I know everything. I'm
Right.
no more arguing. I also just kind of, from my personal view, I've been a high school teacher for 20 years. I obviously adore teenagers. I respect teenagers. I think that they're a completely undervalued segment of our society. These kids have been the most affected by this pandemic. They have had everything happen to them over the last year. They have had no say-so in anything. Not going, the shutdown, remote learning, hybrid, they've had no say-so. Everything has been done to them. We finally have an opportunity to listen to them and to take their opinions into account. And I think that we would be foolish and remiss not to listen to our students. They don't want, 70-something% is not in favor of coming back every day. For whatever reason their reason is, it's their reason. And I just really think that we should be listening to these kids. I know that we don't always like listening to them, but I think that they're very passionate about this, and routine and structure and all of these things that these kids are finally, I see it in my own daughter, she's finally in a groove. She's finally figured out a work schedule and a study schedule and all this stuff, and to pull the rug out from under her again for the last 7 weeks of school, which in most cases, if you've ever taught, post-spring break, enrichment, review, it's not a whole lot of new information typically. I just think that I don't see the value in doing this to these kids for 7 weeks. And that's my final take.
I would just want to leave with one thought, and I don't disagree with everybody. That's the beauty of this board, is that it is a very dialogue board, and it's helped us make a lot of great decisions over the last 5-6 years that I've been engaged in it. One thing in this whole process that I just find fascinating is the hypocrisy in the process. That Friday night, there'll be a game played. 2 football teams will hug, tackle, scratch, claw, And it's actually two really good football teams. I mean, we're talking about playing, the quasi-state championship game right away Friday night, right? Somebody from Bolingbrook gets sick. We find out Monday. Everybody comes back to class. Who are we protecting here? If we're going to do it, then we need to do it all the way. And I appreciate what you said about the sports brings back normalcy. But if we're truly focused on SAT and college and everything else, then let's burn the boats and be focused on SAT, college, and everything associated with that. Not the fact that we're running into each other on a soccer field, or it was basketball, or football, the most contact of all. Maybe basketball could be, at least the way I played it. But that's where I sit back as a former school parent, but watching this all evolve, and then in the business world that I get to sit in as well. And I watch this, and I'm just like, really? That's okay? And as I said, putting a bunch of young people in buses and moving them around for 40, 45 minutes a day, that's okay. But moving them into a classroom in that type of environment, then all bets are off. And I understand it. And my real heart says, and this, I know I'm going to floor a couple people here.
Yeah, I think I
it's
might fall off
6
my chair.
weeks. It's like, really, what are we going to do for 6 weeks? All right, I mean, I agree with you. 6 weeks is seat and tray in the upright lock position, make sure your stuff's stowed away. We're circling the runway, you'll be at the gate in 6 weeks. And everybody's off the plane. But the mixed message here, in my mind, is just crazy. Go out and hug and tackle on Friday night, but don't come to class on Tuesday if you were here on Monday. That's what I don't get. So that's my, or the idea that, I've got 3 jobs, and so I'm going to go out and interact with the public for my gainful employment, but I'm worried about sitting next to somebody in sociology class. That's where I struggle with this, and if we're going to do it, then I'm going to say, burn the boats. If that's our focus, then that's our focus. And I know that's not the case, because we're going to play the games and we're going to do what we got to do, but that's where I'm torn as I sit back with, I don't have a horse in this race. I'll be the first to admit it. And so it gives me an interesting perspective. And I'll just leave it at that, my hypocrisy speech.
Well, no. Does anyone want, unless, we don't have to, but if certainly any of us
Well, I mean-
have the absolute right to, if anybody wants to make a motion of some sort. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, so I agree with a lot of what Joe said. I understand some of this. I still have a problem with the structural piece of it too. And the other thing is the 3 to 6 feet change was not technically the CDC, right? And they're not going to, not yet.
They're
right.
expected
Yeah,
to
they're expected,
tomorrow,
right.
actually.
Okay, they're expected to. But I just don't see coming back in 4 weeks to, make a change if finally they say 3%. So, I mean, I would be comfortable in saying, would we need to make a motion and have a vote to stay blended AB for the remainder of the year? I mean, is that or just because we're already doing that, do we not have to?
We don't need any motion for not doing it.
Just remain as is if we do nothing.
Correct.
Okay.
And if they change, in the next 2 weeks, something changes, but I think
We
it's
could
got
call a
to
board
be
meeting and
really
meet
early
again.
April or nothing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rich, and we can call an emergency meeting whenever we need to.
So that would be why we would vote. That would be one of the potential reasons we would vote to say for the whole school year, to see where the board members are, because I don't think we leave that hanging out there over the students if
Agree.
the number of board members would not, even if they came back and changed that social distancing and it's April 20th, would come back and vote to go back at that point in time.
Yep.
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
make a motion. I motion that we stay blended AB for the remainder of the school year.
Second.
May I have a moment, please?
Of course.
Just make sure Linda got the motion.
Yes, so I have the motion to stay blended AB for the rest of the school year, and the motion is from Mr. Lucetti, and the second is from Ms. Janice Doyle. Would you like the vote opened?
Any further discussion on this matter?
Okay, and this is just clarification. Can the motion be until the contact tracing and that is eliminated? So I mean, if
So
we make.
there's a
right.
motion, there's a
Right.
motion on the table that
Right.
has a second, so that needs to be voted on before there be any additional motions.
Okay, so let me ask a question then.
Could modify if other
Right.
people would, yes.
Right, until until the isolation period is down to, you're not gonna wipe out a class. If we make that motion pass it, I mean, we could still have a meeting if they did reduce it to, a 3-day isolation, right?
Correct.
Okay, then I don't care. That's fine. I'm
Well,
good.
no, but I want to be clear, Rich, that's not the spirit of what Chris is trying to get across
Yes.
here. Chris is trying to make a declaration
That's what I-
to the
Right.
student body and to the Lincoln Way area that even if they came back on April 1st, we'll use April Fool's Day, just because I'm on a roll, and stated that, there is no, there's no more contact tracing, it's all cured, it's done. And then, and blah, 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 then we're basically saying, well, that's all fascinating, but we're still gonna go AB, and you'll graduate when you graduate and do prom or whatever else you're planning on doing, but we're going AB. And and you're gonna put your stick in the mud today. Well, I know, but that's when you vote, you'll be willing to do that.
So if the motion fails, then what are we at?
We have to still in hybrid, we just. Still. We can't, there's nothing to change.
We're not making who's ever not making the declaration, you get 4 people that are declaring that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Motion in a second.
All right, are you ready to open the vote, Linda?
Yes, I am.
All right. If you'd open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
As discussed, huh? Is that vague?
It's on tape.
Yeah.
Well, all right, then, I don't like how it's,
Yeah. Yeah, we need, if you can, just put it in there.
because I only say that because there was a lot discussed, because I just want to make sure.
The motion is to stay blended AB for the rest of the school year. I will read the vote. Mr. Janik, no. Ms. Janice Doyle, yes. Mr. Kirking, no. Mr. Lacine, no. Mr. Lucetti, yes. Mr. Costick, no. Ms. Stokes, yes. The motion fails. Well, yeah, the motion fails.
All right. Moving on.
But we are still on.
We are still.
AB hybrid,
Yes, we are.
unless there are significant changes.
Which are very rare, but I like to keep our doors, our options open.
With all due respect, unless there's another motion.
Right, of course.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we don't eliminate the fact that if there was another member that wanted to make a motion,
Right.
they can still do so.
I think what Mrs. Janice Doyle is saying, that would probably only happen if there was something significant that would happen, right, Beth?
Yes.
Okay,
Right now, somebody could make
Oh,
a
right now.
motion.
absolutely.
Okay, I just want
Does
to be
anyone-
clear.
Does anyone else want to make a motion tonight before we move into informational items? I feel like I'm going to swing with like an auctioneer, but I don't want to end the meeting going once, going twice. Just kidding. All right, thank you. Moving on to informational items. Report of the Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board meeting held February 23rd. Deidre, do you have anything for us?
No, nothing different than what's in the minutes.
Thank you. Moving on to FOIA requests.
FOIA requests are in your backup materials. We had one, and there was no information regarding the FOIA.
All right, Building and Grounds.
Once again, included in your backup materials, Mr. Wilkie is back now that we're back full in person, if anyone has any questions.
Community Relations.
Once again, included in your backup materials for your review.
Asset of the Month.
April asset of the month is responsible decision-making, planning and decision-making. At home, allow for mistakes, don't blow up at a poor choice, and don't rescue your child from consequences. I have to remember that one once a day right now. And at school, include student leaders on decision-making committees and boards, and in the community, offer workshops for community members on planning and decision-making skills.
Thank you. 210 Advisory, Beth.
I was unable to attend, but I did get a report. The meeting was brief, and they had initial discussions on some of the handbook review and reviewing highly restrictive interventions for students with IEPs. They were just introductory discussions, and they will be continued next month.
And then I believe the student handbook will be brought to April to the board.
Yes,
for-
after the final,
Yes,
yes.
after the next meeting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. First reading, textbook adoption.
Textbook adoptions are included in your backup materials. We've got English 1, AP Psych, United States History, Child Development, Auto, AP Stats, Environmental Bio, Anatomy and Physiology. They're on display. They will be on display for the next month in our district office if anyone would like to see them. And then they will be brought back for approval for the board at the next meeting. We have a 5-year textbook cycle in place now, and Dr. Fury has done a very good job working with our department chairs to put that 5-year cycle in place, and that is also then built into our 5cast.
Debt service tax abatements.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes, so we had an opportunity to check with the district attorney, who confirmed that once funds are transferred from any fund to debt service, there's by no legal means to have those funds returned. Therefore, he recommends that the board wait until February of '22, at which time we could pass a resolution to fund an abatement, transfer the funds, and abate the taxes all in one shot, and concur with his recommendation that would be the most prudent and conservative thing to do. And then, so with the discussion of which fiscal year the funds would come, it turns the only option would be, it'd be out of fiscal year '23. And so we would just have built that into the budget, or it could just come from fund balance, but the funds would come out during that fiscal year.
Fiscal year 2020.
22, sorry.
Fiscal year 2022 budget calendar.
Just wanted to input that into the board. You'll notice a change. We are moving because of the scheduling with the board. We'll do another 5cast in May as we bring the budget together.
Thank you. Superintendent's district report.
Nothing, or I'm sorry, legislative first,
sorry,
is
oops, sorry about
there's nothing concrete yet to report, but we'll watch here the spring session as they go back down. If they go back down to Springfield, we'll keep an eye on things, and I'll keep the board apprised of any developments that would impact the district.
Superintendent's district reports.
Couple things included in the backup materials. School board election is on April 6th. We have a meeting on the 15th. We always need to have a meeting in the middle of the month for bill paying and for consistency. Then we will not, Linda talked with Will County to confirm today, we'll have the canvass of election results April 27th. So then we'd like to have a special meeting on the 29th to canvass the election results, reorganize the board, and then move to closed session to discuss collective negotiating, as we're currently in the process of that. And then this would fit within the Illinois School Code. It's something we have to do every other year. Because of the timing of the election, we typically have to have an extra meeting to ratify, canvass the results and reorganize the board. So wanted to share publicly and with the board, this would be our plan, and then we would amend our board schedule and post this in the papers and on the website appropriately.
Any other district business this month?
Yeah, we are looking to provide some opportunities for our students socially as we go through the rest of the year. I know some principals have put out socially in other districts. They plan to have a prom. I'm not promising a prom, but we are working to do something based upon mitigation and the time as we move around May. In terms of an outdoor graduation, we have ordered the stages. We hope to have an outdoor graduation with 2 to 4 tickets per graduate, socially distanced on the field. But once again, we'll continue to monitor the guidelines. We're at 25% capacity now of outdoor venues. Our stadiums are quite large, so we'll continue to work towards that this spring to hope to have a graduation for our seniors.
Our stadiums hold about 50,000.
Yeah, they actually clarified today exactly how many people per 1,000 square feet of green space. So Mr. Wilkie was working on those calculations this afternoon. But we do have large green space in all of our stadiums, which will be helpful.
Any correspondence,
None,
other than all those emails we got?
other than the emails. In the emails, we did go alphabetically, and everything that was not gotten to will be posted under public comment.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to move into closed session to discuss collective bargaining.
So moved?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it.